Okay, recording is started. So I hope you've had a good week and a restful weekend. Today is Saturday. So there is an announcement to give later. I will just finish the class, then I will mention the announcement, waiting for more people to come. Okay, anyway, we will begin with the Mangala Charan prayers. Okay, we can sing together with me. The wordings are on the screen. Okay. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Translation: I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. And we will say the pranam mantra for His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. And these are our presiding deities. Sri Sri Gaur Gita Sundar Gaurahari on the left, and Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai on the right. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sing along with me together this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Okay? We'll sing it 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I will just say the pranam mantra for my Guru Maharaj. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimha Iti Namini. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayitim girim yadkripa tamaham vandre Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram. So we will begin with the Gita Mahatmya. So this is verse 6. And the verse is like this. Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dobda Gopala Nandana Arto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat. Translation: all the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Nanda. Arjuna is the calf. The beautiful nectar of the Gita is the milk. And the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect are the drinkers and enjoyers of that milk. So a bit of explanation. Here we have the word Upanishad, right? It says Sarvo Panishado. That means of all the Upanishads. Now, what are Upanishads? Upanishads are actually sections in the Vedas. The Vedas, there are 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva, right? So these 4 Vedas are divided into 4 parts. So there is the Brahmana, and then there is the Aranyaka, and then there is the Samhitas, and then there is the Upanishads. Now, amongst these 4 sections in each of the Vedas, the Upanishad section is considered to be the most important section, because this section gives you philosophy. It gives you understanding about the Supreme. The other sections will talk about rituals, how to do the rituals, why the rituals are needed to be done in a certain way, the science behind the ritual, and then things like that. Whereas the Upanishads, they don't talk about rituals. They talk only about the ultimate truth. So that's why the Upanishads are considered the cream, the most important part of the Vedas. Now, if all these Upanishads, so Sarva Upanishad, there are how many Upanishads? There are 108 Upanishads. And all these Upanishads, Sarva Upanishad, if it's all brought together, and imagine it all took the shape of one single cow, Gavo, right? Then, you know, the essence of all of these Upanishads, what's the essence of a cow? The essence of the cow is the milk. So if the entire Upanishads were to be compressed and juiced, and you get the juice out of it, the essence of that is like the milk of the cow, isn't it? And Sripad Chankaracharya says that milk is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of all the Upanishads. That's why Gita is also called Gita Upanishad. And who is the person who is milking that cow? So Krishna is the one speaking the Bhagavad Gita. So he's milking that cow. For whose benefit? It's for the benefit of the calf. The calf is drinking. Now the calf represents Arjuna, who is very interestedly drinking the milk of the cow. So we are all also like the calf. We are representing Arjuna. And you know, the cow, it actually gives so much milk. The milk is not only for the calf. The calf is satisfied with the milk, but then there's so much of abundant extra milk, which everybody else can drink also. So this Gita Saram is for all of us. So that's the glory of this Gita Mahatmya for this verse. So now we will say the invocation prayer for Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So a bit of recap from yesterday. Yesterday we completed chapter 5. So the title of chapter 5 was Work, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, right? Or it's also known as Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So there are only two takeaways, which are the most important points. A very short chapter, only about 29 verses. So work, the first takeaway is work in yoga or devotion is better than renunciation. So remember, I've mentioned there are two approaches initially. Arjuna wanted to, just renounce everything. He wanted to just go in a different way, drop everything and go to the forest. So there was renunciation. But in the path of yoga, Krishna is telling Arjuna, better you start with work first. Work or devotion in the right yogic mind frame. So that is better. So we talked about it in some extent. And the other takeaway is, now, if it is better to work in yoga and devotion, yes, right? And even that work, even if we are doing work, that devotional service to Krishna is the perfection of that work, or the perfection of karma yoga is like the beginning of yoga. And karma yoga, the perfection of karma yoga is bhakti yoga. So we talked about that also. So a little bit of a bit more, just to give you an understanding. So yesterday in chapter 5, Arjuna asked, which is better, sannyasa, jnana or work, right? Which I mentioned. And the answer was very clear. Krishna said, both are good. But, it's better for you to do the work or work in devotion, which is better. And then he went on to describe about action in yoga and linked it a bit towards the end. He tinged it with bhakti, because just simply working without fruits is one path. But when you add bhakti into it, it becomes even better. So we will talk about these things later in the later chapters in detail. Okay. And then Krishna talked about the goal of yoga. So what is the goal eventually? The goal is to attain liberation. That's the preliminary goal, but there are other goals, but those goals Krishna didn't talk about it yet. So he gave a hint here and there in chapter 4 and all that. But in general, we want to be free from the cycle of birth and death, and then attain Brahman. So the Brahman was introduced. Brahman is basically God realization, where we see God everywhere, including in ourselves and in other people. When we say that we see God in ourselves, that doesn't mean that we are God. It means that within our body, right, there are two souls. One soul is ourselves, the soul, and there is another soul, which is called Paramatma, where there is Atma and there's Paramatma. So both are together sitting within the region of our heart. We heard about this in the previous chapters. And when we say that we see God everywhere, it means we become conscious of the Paramatma in every other living entity. So that makes us behave in a different way with everyone. So that is yogic consciousness. Okay. So now let me just yeah. So today, okay, that's this the Y got missing somehow. It went down. So today it's chapter 6, Dyana Yoga. And in Dyana Yoga, Krishna begins with again reasserting. He starts chapter 6, the verses 1 and 2. He again reasserts, one who works in renunciation is actually the true yogi. Because previously in chapter 5, we heard about the false yogi. Remember the Falgu river, and then remember the crane standing on one leg, and then remember Markata Vairagya, which is the monkey renunciation. So all these things we talked about yesterday. This is false renunciation. So today Krishna goes a little bit more on, he actually talks about the real renunciation. So one who works in renunciation, that means he's working, but he is completely not attached to the results of that work. That is true renunciation. One who has renounced the desire for sense gratification, that is the true renunciation. Not someone who just artificially doesn't do anything, but in the mind or in the heart, constantly meditating on the desires. So that is cheating. So it doesn't work that way. So in essence, I'd like to just summarize it in a way which is easy to understand. Okay. Now there is path A. So path A means someone who wants to be away. They want to go to the spiritual path, right? That's path A. So this is what Arjuna thought. And this is what many people in the world sometimes think also. What is this path A? Remember, Arjuna, he wanted to go away from the battle. He wanted to drop everything and just go to the forest, right? So, in general, we have the frustrated person. Why is the person frustrated? So the person is frustrated because he is in a materialistic consciousness. He's covered by Maya or illusion. So due to the illusion, whatever he wants to achieve, he doesn't turn out right because he doesn't have the correct understanding. So now Arjuna wanted to renounce everything. So path A is, I am frustrated, I will just drop everything and I will go to the forest and become sannyasi. So this is not real sannyas, this is called falgu sannyas or false renunciation. Why? Because the person is simply renouncing simply due to frustration only. It's not due to higher knowledge. It's not due to higher attachment, nothing. He doesn't know anything about higher attachment, nothing. There's no desire for spiritual attachment. It is simply escapism. So that was explored in quite detail in the few chapters that we covered already. So it's like this. You all recognize this picture. This is a virtual reality simulation, right? So someone puts these goggles and puts the earplugs and then puts some sensors on the hands, and then it's like a program that runs, and the person suddenly, as soon as they put on all these things, they disappear into a different world. So it's like a world of Maya, virtual reality, not reality. It's different, but it's illusion. So someone who's doing Falgu sannyasa is like this. They just go away, but actually they have not really escaped from the problem. They are simply put themselves in further illusion. So they have not attained liberation. A Falgu sannyasa will most of the time fall back down again into Maya. He will commit, that's why we have sometimes holy people who, so-called holy people who do a lot of nonsensical activities and get into trouble. So very rarely, some of them actually find the right path and go to and achieve liberation. That happens once in a while, but it's a rare situation. So therefore, path A is not recommended by Krishna. Krishna denounces path A. So actually, path A is not actually a path. It's basically a escapism technique. It is something like this ostrich. Now we all know, or if you don't know, ostrich is not a very intelligent bird. It's very big. It's quite powerful also. If it has very, very sharp claws and very strong legs, 2 legs only, it runs. Now, this lion sometimes likes to catch this ostrich and eat it. So when the ostrich sees the lion, right, if it has some sense, it will run away. But sometimes the ostrich is so scared, suddenly is so shocked by the lion, instead of running away, it thinks it will do this. Can you see this picture? The ostrich will actually bury its head under the sand. It thinks that, no, now I cannot see the lion. I'm safe now. So this is like Falgu Vairagya also. So we are just simply telling ourselves, okay, and then renounce and false. So when someone does Falgu Vairagya, that person actually gets sin for neglecting his varnashrama duties, his duties to his family, to his country, to his whatever. If he just falsely does this, he gets sin. So that's what Krishna told Arjuna not to go in that path. So path B is the yoga path. So now in yoga, when we talk about yoga, there are 2 paths in yoga. So path A is actually not even a path, so it's to be thrown away. So when we talk about yoga, there is actually 2 parts to yoga. We'll talk about the first one. So the first part is called Jnana path, the path of light or the path of knowledge. So it begins with karma yoga. We already talked about it. Karma yoga means you need to do the action, but we renounce the fruit of that action. We don't want the results. We just do it for the sake of duty. That is karma yoga in the path of jnana. So later I will give the difference when I talk about bhakti. Okay. So again, the schematic diagram we can show here. The frustrated person, right? What this frustrated person does, he meets by some good mercy, by some good fortune, he meets a guru. And when he meets the guru, he actually gets transcendental knowledge and he begins karma yoga. And as he continues with karma yoga nicely, he gets more and more knowledge and realization, and he slowly starts to really genuinely renounce. So then he comes to jnana yoga level. So that's when he takes that time he's already really renounced. So that is true sannyasa. So that is the correct path of yoga, not the A path. So then such a sannyasa can attain liberation. When such a person is completely renounced, then he will become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. But what does he do when he gets liberated? He needs to go somewhere, right? He cannot remain in material consciousness. So where to go? So he will attain the Supreme Lord. Now the Supreme Lord has 3 features, right? We will talk about these features later. The most basic feature or the basic understanding of the Supreme Lord is the Brahman. It's kind of like the example is given like the sun. Now the sun, there is sun and sunlight, right? Now sometimes people don't really see the sun. It might be covered by clouds, so they cannot see the sun. But they see sunlight everywhere. It's so bright everywhere. Daytime, it's so bright, right? So that is like Brahman. Brahman is due because there is a sun. Why there is even sunlight is because there is sun. So sometimes the sun cannot be seen. So therefore, people think that there is no sun. I mean, We all know there is a sun, but it can be argued that if the hypothetical scenario was given like this, then they will say, but I cannot see the sun. But that is, so the sunlight is like Brahman. So, but Brahman, the sunlight, has a source. It comes from somewhere. So like that, there is a higher level of understanding of the Supreme Lord. So that we will talk about later in later chapters. So he will attain Brahman, and then he will have attained spiritual realization of the first level. Now, this Brahman, as I mentioned, is part of God. There are three parts to God. Brahman, one more part which includes Brahman, and the third part which includes all the other two as well. So I'm not going to name them right now. Later we will talk about it. Okay. Now the part C, I told you there is in yoga. First there is non-yoga, there is false renunciation, then there is yoga, and in yoga it branches into two. Okay. Remember the two pathways yesterday? I showed the two pathways that branched. So one is the yoga path, which is jnana, and the other one is the bhakti. So in the bhakti path is very special. You can either directly from the beginning go with the bhakti path, like you can see here, right from the beginning there's bhakti yoga. That means they don't really follow karma yoga or jnana yoga separately. They go straight away and follow bhakti yoga. Or you can follow karma yoga and then connect to bhakti. Or you can follow karma yoga and jnana yoga and then connect to bhakti. So therefore, it eventually leads, it can diverge into bhakti at any of these pathways. So that is a speciality of the bhakti yoga path. Now, the earlier path, the jnana yoga path, why I put this picture, I forgot to explain the picture. Why I put this picture is because this is like, to follow this jnana path is not a very easy path. The way to go is not so easily achieved, because it's very independent. You have to climb. It's like climbing the mountain to reach the heights. It's full of difficulties. We are going to explore why it's difficult in today's class, right? So Krishna therefore says, this path is very difficult, Arjuna. Better you follow the bhakti path, which is much easier. Why is the bhakti path easier? So the picture here is like, instead of climbing the mountain, the bhakti path is like sitting on the lift or the gondola here and just going all the way up. So the difference is, in the jnana path, we are using our own intelligence, our own determination, and based on that, we are very strongly determined and really spending our full time looking through all the Vedic texts and everything. And with all of that, we are trying to climb the mountain. Whereas the bhakti yoga path, it's called the path of surrender. Why it's called the path of surrender? Because can you see, when we sit into this gondola, we actually surrender to this gondola. Whether the gondola is going to save us, it's going to drop, it's going to break, we have faith that this gondola will not break. And we just surrender to it. And therefore, if we are lucky, it goes up without breaking. So we are surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not some mere gondola or anything like that. And we are confident that the Supreme Lord will deliver if we follow the path of Bhakti Yoga by His grace and by His mercy. So therefore, it becomes an easier path. And that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna to do also. Later on also, he will again, every chapter he says it, later he will show. So the schematic diagram is like this, right? Now we have the frustrated person. Now, when the frustrated person practices devotional service, when he starts to practice bhakti, when he cultivates some bhakti, how he cultivates the bhakti? Because the bhakti somehow was given to him, either in this life or in his previous life, by someone, due to his some kind of mercy. Maybe he did something, maybe he gave flowers to the Lord, maybe he smelled the incense of the Lord somehow, or maybe he ate prasadam somehow with some faith, or maybe he served some holy people. So any of these things like that has the power to plant the seed of bhakti in one's heart. So then the frustrated person, when he practices this bhakti, he becomes less frustrated. And then he begins to follow the path of bhakti, which is called path C. And by the practice of bhakti, either he can follow the karma jnana pathway or the karma to bhakti pathway, or directly bhakti pathway. Actually, the bhakti pathway includes karma and jnana together inside already. How is that? We will talk about it in detail in chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 and 12. It's all about bhakti. Okay, so now the bhakta path, directly, just by following this path, one can attain true renunciation. How is it he can attain true renunciation so easily? So it's because he learns to attach himself to a higher taste. Because that's the advantage in this path of bhakti. The other path, it becomes dry. There is nothing, remember yesterday I took the picture of the trapeze. When you swing on the trapeze, you first have to let go of the trapeze, right? So that's detachment. But at the same time, you must catch on to another person. So then you are saved. So therefore, you detach from matter and you catch on to Krishna. So it's done right from the beginning. So as we develop as we practice holding on stronger and stronger and stronger for Krishna, then automatically we can reduce our clinging tendency for material nature. So that is the path of bhakti. So the bhakti path, it actually transcends Brahman realization, and it goes through the second part of the realization, which we are going to discuss today. And it goes straight to the third part of the realization of the Supreme Lord, which is Bhagavan. So what does that mean? Like I told you the example of the sun. Now there is sunlight. And then there is the sun itself. And then within the sun, there is the Surya Dev, deity of the sun, or we call Surya Narayana. So there is sunlight, sun, the surface of the sun globe itself, and within the sun there is the deity of the sun who is controlling that sun, who is the lord of that sun, right? So similarly, Brahman is like the effulgence, Brahma Jyoti, correct? So it's like the effulgence of the sun. Now, what is the sun? The sun is, later we will talk about it today, it's called the Paramatma, the local realization of Paramatma in every living entity and in every atom also. That is Paramatma. And higher than Paramatma is from the sun planet, inside there is the deity of the sun, which is Surya Dev, like Surya Narayana. So therefore, Krishna is the origin of the Paramatma. He is also the origin of the Brahman effulgence. Whatever that's in the Brahman is in Bhagavan. Whatever that's in Paramatma is also in Bhagavan. But what is in Bhagavan is not necessarily in Brahman. Because Brahman doesn't have form. It's just light, right? Eternity. Sat, eternity is there. Whereas Bhagavan has beautiful form. So it is actually higher realization than Brahman, and Paramatma realization. It's the highest realization. So the Bhakta automatically realizes Bhagavan, and because he realizes Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna, automatically he realizes Paramatma, automatically he realizes Brahman. But that is not the case for someone who just achieved Brahman. From Brahman, they cannot understand Paramatma and they cannot understand Bhagavan, right? So that is the point. And later we will talk about this again in further chapters to prove, to give you verses to prove this point. So here I'm just giving so that you can understand. So the true yogi, so Krishna, we already said in this chapter 6, Krishna reasserts what is the true yogi. And then he begins to talk about Dyana Yoga. Now, I mentioned there is two parts, isn't it? So here are the two parts. I've summarized it. The first part is the path of Jnana. You can see the Jnana Marga. Marga means path. There is Jnana Marga on the left and there is Bhakti Marga on the right. Both are parallel. Both are parallel in the sense that many things are similar, right? But there is a difference. Later we'll talk about the difference. So in the Jnana path, it begins with Karma Yoga. The first step is Karma Yoga, renouncing the fruits of action. Second step is when karma yoga becomes, when we become very expert in karma yoga, then as we are doing karma yoga, we get knowledge. So eventually we go to the next level of jnana yoga. That means fully cultivating knowledge and getting realized knowledge. And at that point, one can achieve Brahman realization already at the point of jnana yoga. At karma yoga, you cannot yet achieve Brahman because you have just learned to renounce, but we haven't learned to go where to go. If we come out of matter, we don't know yet where to go. But jnana yoga will tell us where to go. So then Brahman realization is achieved, liberated. And then from jnana yoga, there is one more step to complete. So remember, I said there are 3 levels of Bhagavan realization. The spirit, there is the Brahman, and there is the intermediate level, which is called Paramatma realization. So that one is achieved by the next level. After the knowledge is perfected, one will begin the process of dhyana. Dhyana or dhyana yoga is also called Ashtanga yoga. Ashta anga. Anga means limbs. Ashta means 8. So this dhyana yoga actually has 8 parts to it. We will explore that today. So then Krishna continues with this chapter. In the jnani path, yoga ladder, karma leads to jnana, work leads to jnana. Jnana is cessation. That means no more activities because one has understood the purpose of work already. And then he moves to dhyana. Then only we are qualified to sit and do meditation, dhyana. And then Krishna continues to talk about this method. He's now basically focusing on this path, the path B, which we mentioned just now, the Jnana Marga path. So now we're talking about Ashtanga Yoga. So what is this Ashtanga Yoga all about? It is basically all about controlling the mind. Very important point. And the same things are also there in Bhakti Yoga, but we will show you the methods are very different. Karma Yoga we also practice in Bhakti, but the methods are slightly different. Jnana Yoga we also practice in Bhakti, but the methods are different. Ashtanga Yoga, the controlling the mind is also done in Bhakti, but it's different and it's easier, much easier in Bhakti Yoga compared to doing it independently in the this process, Ashtanga Yoga. So now we will learn about Ashtanga Yoga in this chapter. What is this all about? It's called the mechanical way of controlling the mind. Whereas bhakti is the surrender way of controlling the mind. So we would learn about the mechanical way. So Krishna continues, chapter 6.6. We will say this verse. Bandhur atmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jita anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. Translation. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So this is a very obvious truth. We all understand this, how to control our mind, right? So Krishna is saying, we need to master the mind to help us in this process of Ashtanga Yoga. If we cannot control our mind, then the yoga cannot go any higher. So there are processes given. So, the mind is like, we have this saying in English, right? An idle brain is the devil's workshop. So the mind is, all the time, if we are not engaged, sometimes when we are very busy, we don't have time to gossip. We don't have time to say bad things about people. We don't have time to, do other nonsensical things or come up with mischief. So it's like that's the way to treat teenagers, because when teenagers that's the time when they start exploring. So we have to engage the teenagers in a very busy way so that they are always engaged. They don't have time to explore into nonsensical things like drugs or computer games unnecessarily and a lot of things. So we have to find healthy engagement. So the same point only is for the mind. The mind needs to have healthy engagement. But what is spiritual engagement? So if we can have spiritual engagement, that's even better. So the mind is like the genie. There's a story of a genie, right? So once there's this man who had a magic lamp, and this magic lamp, this genie came out, and the genie said, I am yours to command only as long as you can continuously give me work to do. If you do not give me work to do, I will destroy you, the genie said. So isn't that very much like our mind? If our mind is kept busy, then it helps us to achieve our goal. Because when we achieve anything we do also, we use the help of our mind. But when we are not busy, when we are left nothing to do, the mind starts to work against us sometimes. He starts to say, that person actually, he doesn't really, he's saying, he looks at you nicely only, but in the back, actually, he doesn't think nicely of you. So, that kind of things all we will start thinking when we are free. So therefore, we need to engage. So the genie, therefore, what this guy did, he told the genie, okay, I need to save my life. Okay, then he gave all the most difficult work to do. He said, build for me a road from here all the way to another country. And the genie just did it within a few days. And then the genie came back again. I'm going to eat you. You better tell me the next one. And then the guy like that, he started saying one by one, polish the house, clean the place, put beautiful marble in my house, make me a palace, change the color of my palace. So like that, he kept on thinking. And the genie also said, you cannot give me the same job twice. That's another condition the genie put on that man. So this guy was getting desperate. He was running out of ideas. And then he went and asked one holy person, a wise person. Then this person told him what to do. So the next time the genie came, he told the genie, I've got a work for you. I want you to go up. There's a lot of bamboo in the tree, in the forest nearby. You find the largest bamboo tree. I want you to go up the bamboo. And when you reach the top of the bamboo, you must go down the bamboo. And when you reach the bottom of the bamboo, you must again go up the bamboo. So you must repeat this constantly. So that became a loop. So then the genie became defeated. He didn't know what else to do. So he kept on doing that. And this fellow also said, okay, enough of this genie. Thank God. Now I'm free of him once and for all. So that's the story about how one should control the mind. So the mind is like that, like the genie. So that's why we have sadhana, spiritual sadhana, and the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is like that. That's why we need to engage our mind in chanting, listening to the Maha Mantra, and again and again and again. This way the mind becomes purified. Because the word mantra comes from the word mana atra. Mana means mind, and atra means to control. So mantra. So to control the mind. The purpose of mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, is to control the mind. But anyway, that's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Oh, okay. Now I'm just showing you this picture. This is a picture of a beautiful palace, right? It's a very nice. You can imagine this is one of those places in Europe, isn't it? You can see here there's a yacht, there's a boat over there, very beautiful scenery and everything. It's a country. And this is the same country. You can see here, like there's a festival, there's balloons, hot air balloons. Look at the place. The houses look very nice. Everything looks very beautiful and nice, right? So what is this country, you might be wondering? So this country is called Lithuania. It's one of the smallest countries in Europe, in the world also. But you can see here, it's between Germany and Belgium and a few other places. So it's near there, Lithuania, very, very ancient country. Now, why I'm suddenly talking about this, you might think. I'm trying to prove a point about controlling the mind, okay? You'll be surprised to know that, the beautiful picture I showed you about this country has a terrible secret. You know what's the secret of this country? Despite such beauty and such nice things, you can read here, almost one third of all deaths in a year is by suicide. So this is actually the #1 country in the world for suicide rates. 1/3 of the population of that, 1/3 of deaths. That means if there's all deaths, death can be due to accident, can be due to health. But this is a very advanced country. Medicine and all is very nice. The place looks very nice. So not so much on stress they die, but they die due to suicide. Now, why would we die of suicide? So another example is this country. This is Russia. Russia also, okay, very nice. It looks good and everything. But that's number 3, I think, in the chart. Number 2 or number 3 in the highest suicide rate in the world. And then we have South Korea, another very, very highly developed country, modern, one of the richest countries in the world, boasting numerous world primacies, including fastest internet connection, super modern technologies, one of the world's best education and hospitals in the world, South Korea, right? But it's also number 4 or number 5. Let me show you the full list. So here is a list which I compiled this was in 2019, before COVID. Now it might be different, it might be worse or I don't know. But this is 2019 data, right? And you'll be surprised to see this is the top countries who are committing suicide, people who are committing suicide. Lithuania, number 1, number 2, Russia, number 4, South Korea, number 11, Belgium, Hungary, Japan, France, Switzerland, Finland, Austria. So I've skipped some countries, but then you can see, you'll be surprised to see that there are some very advanced, modern, nice countries which are in this rate. So, there's this professor here. This is called Richard Easterlin. He is a professor of economics at the University of Southern California. He made this comparison and he wrote a paper. And in that paper, you find a lot of rich countries in the top 12. You see the top 12 wealthiest countries are there in the top 10 of the suicide rate. Whereas the bottom suicide rate countries, you see, are mostly poor countries. You see the GDP is very low. Look at the one, Antigua, Barbados, Grenada, Bahamas, Jamaica. So like that, you have a lot of countries which are not necessarily very rich. So this is a bit of a, people usually think, oh, when we have no money, when we are in misery, when we don't have anything, poor countries, usually we would expect higher suicide rate. But amazingly, we find that rich countries are having high suicide rate. So this is called the Easterling paradox. He wrote this paper. He showed that rich countries have higher suicide rates compared to poor countries. So it's called the Easterling paradox. Now, one might wonder, the point I'm trying to raise here is why these kind of things happen, why people commit suicide. Now, Shastras tell us that we have 3 major problems in life. Many of our miseries come from 3 directions. So we have, I mentioned this also before in one of the previous classes. We have Adi Atmika, miseries which arise from the mind and one's own mind, right? And then we have Adi Bautika, that means miseries due to other living entities like mosquito and all that. Then we have Adi Daivika, due to natural disasters, calamities, diseases that come, plague like COVID and all that. These are Adi Daivika. Now, usually people don't, which one do you think people will commit suicide for? The majority of it. No, to commit suicide is the worst thing, right? That means the person is so traumatized, he cannot take it anymore. So very seldom people commit suicide because of, natural calamities, even though it can be quite horrible. And very seldom people commit suicide also because of being attacked by other living entities or being disturbed by other living entities. In fact, the most times people commit suicide is due to Adi Atmika. Because they are so disturbed in their minds. They cannot control their mind. The thought process is keeping them constantly in. Nowadays, we have mental health, mental well-being, right? More and more people are developing mental trauma, especially in the COVID time and all that. So Krishna, this is a point which I'm just highlighting in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We highlighted this yesterday also. So just try to worship in devotional service Vasudev. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of their senses effectively. They cannot, even great sages find it difficult to control their minds and senses. So therefore the yoga path is given. But the normal yoga path, it's not so easy. Whereas here it says, with devotional service, it becomes so much easier. So Therefore, Krishna is giving therefore he was talking about yoga, isn't it? If you remember, he was saying that we need to take help from the mind. How? We need to learn to control the mind. So therefore, Krishna says the dhyana process is one of the processes to control the mind. Now, what is this process all about? So we will talk about that. Then Krishna continues to talk about the process, and he talks about the goal. What is the goal of this process? What do you get from this Ashtanga or Dhyana Yoga? You actually can go beyond Brahman. So we will talk about that in 6 and 7. And then he talks about the method. So here is the verse. This verse is a bit long. We don't have too much time. I will just skip the pronunciation and go straight to the translation. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place. So how to do this Dhyana Yoga? So Krishna is telling us what to do. In order to control the mind through the process of dhyana, that means meditation. Remember, this was the process during Satya Yuga, in the early age. But now it's not easy to do. Why? Because we can see here. We have to go to a secluded place. That's why, Himalayas, forests, and these kind of places, that's where the holy sages go. And then what should we do? We should lay a mat of kusa grass on the ground. Kusha grass, it's like, you can find it in the Indian shops. It's like we use it for worship and a lot of other things. So after you make that mat of kusha grass, you need to sit on that mat. Before that, you need to cover it with deer skin and a soft cloth. So there are reasons behind all these things. I won't go into that now. If you have a question on that, we can talk about it. There are reasons for it, why this setup is there. And the seat should be neither too high nor too low, and should be situated in a sacred place. Oh, that's another problem. So therefore, these are some of the things we need to do for dhyana, according to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. So then he continues, the yogi should then sit on it very firmly. That means straight and without, shaking, moving and practice yoga to purify the heart. The purpose of it is to purify the heart. How? By controlling the mind, senses, and activities, and fixing the mind on one point. That is the method of dhyana, concentration, meditation. So, and then he continues with these next few sets of rules and regulations on how to practice dhyana yoga. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect. That means sit straight line. There are postures. In a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. That means you have to look at the tip of the nose. You mean your eyes look at the tip of your nose, right? But with half closed eyes. There's another verse on that I didn't put here. With half closed eyes. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind. That means we have already come to a level of not having agitation. By practicing karma yoga and jnana yoga, we have come to a situation where we are not so agitated. And then with somewhat of a subdued mind, devoid of fear, because why? We are living in a lonely place, in a lonely environment, right? Completely free from sex life, that means celibacy. One should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So that is the process of dhyana. So if someone comes and tells you, you should do meditation and that's the way to do it, we can understand that in this age, is it practical for us to do things like this? It's not so easy, right? Even one of these things we cannot follow so easily. So dhyana is not so easy after all. So let's see what Krishna has to say. So he says, you have to put me as the goal of life, fixed on me as the goal of life. One has to meditate on Vishnu, not some point of light or some kind of red dot or something like that, like some people like to say. But according to Bhagavad Gita, this is the recommendation. This is what Krishna says. This is what Vedavyas says. So this Ashtanga yoga, there's a diagram of this Dhyana yoga. So this Dhyana yoga has 8 limbs or 8 steps to it. It begins with there are these 8 steps are called yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Now we will just briefly talk about this, right? Now what's yama? Yama means that's the first thing to do. Before we do, and this is for persons who have already followed karma yoga, who have followed jnana yoga. That means they've already cultivated knowledge and goal of life and everything. They've attained Brahman already. Now they want to practice meditation to go higher realization. So there are do's and don'ts. So yama is the don'ts. What are the things one should not do? So therefore you can see here, unagitated, subdued mind. That means the mind should not be agitated. One should not be fearful. One should not indulge in sexual activities. So that is the activity of the yama, according to Jnana Yoga here. And then there are something called niyama. Niyama means do's. What are the things that one should do? So the things that one should do is, for example, here, it's saying here one should hold one's body, neck, and head erect. You know, the way to sit, the way to practice. One should meditate upon me within the heart. So these kind of things are the do's. Like, for example, one should not overeat. Krishna goes on to say in this chapter, one should not eat too much, one should not eat too little, one should not sleep too much, one should not sleep too little. So like that, there are many do's and don'ts, which is part of this process to control the mind. Someone who does these things, who follows them, then there is hope. So after yama and niyama is practiced, the next level is asana. So that together with all these things, the student of the Dyana Yoga, he will begin asanas. Asanas are the yoga postures that we know, the hatha yoga postures, right? Like for example, you know, the different postures. So there are many postures like Surya Namaskar, like, you know, Padmasana, this asana, Vajrasana, so many other asanas where we practice, we condition our body. We make our body healthy and conditioned. Why? The purpose is only one. There is only one purpose for it. The purpose is so that we are healthy, so that we can sit in one place for hours, for not even hours, much more than that. Sit without moving in a comfortable position in Padmasana. Padmasana is the lotus position of sitting. So that's the main goal of these asanas. And once we master this asana, we are able to sit. Then only we begin pranayama. Pranayama is the ability to control the breath, because by controlling the breath, one helps to control the mind. So, you know, breathing techniques, different, you know, anuloma, viloma, breathing from one nostril to the other. And then the pranayama techniques, you know, kumbhaka, rakshaka, and all that, to breathe deeply, to hold the breath, and then to let go. There are certain counting done, you count a few times to keep in your mind. So all this is pranayama. It's all very good for health. Certainly is very good for, that's a different story. We're not talking about health. We're talking about the ultimate goal of this Dhyana Yoga. So after pranayama, once we have mastered this pranayama with the 5 pranas in our body, the soul is actually sitting on the 5 prana within the body. So it's floating on the 5 pranas. So once the pranas are stabilized, then the mind becomes controlled a bit more, much more controlled. And then only one begins the practice of pratyahara. He's able to really detach. He completely detaches from everything. That means he completely detaches from his family, from so many other things, and lives alone and completely not disturbed. He's able to renounce the world perfectly. At this stage, one is attaining liberation already. Once one is able to do pratyahara, he's already able to detach matter. That means he's liberated already. So Brahman is achieved at this point. Okay. Then he continues to go beyond Brahman. He practices dharana, steadying the mind. Dharana means steady the mind, is called concentration. You begin to concentrate on one point and imagine the Supreme Lord. That means we are concentrating on the Paramatma within our heart. That is dharana. And when the concentration becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, it becomes dhyana. Dhyana means deep concentration or meditation. It becomes deep concentration and deep meditation. Nobody can disturb. You are able to concentrate at that level despite any kind of disturbances. And when that becomes fructified, finally one achieves samadhi, which is the goal. And when one achieves samadhi, he is able to realize the Supreme Lord as Paramatma within the heart. He begins to see the Paramatma within himself, within his heart, sitting next to himself. And he also sees the same Paramatma in all other living entities. So such a yogi is even greater than the jnani. This Dyana Yoga, this Dyana yogi is greater because he has achieved a higher realization of the Supreme, which is Paramatma realization. So this is what Krishna is telling to Arjuna. For one, and when one achieves samadhi, he is able to attain the from Paramatma level, he understands, and then he is able to attain Brahman. So there is a story of Dhruva Maharaj. Now, we don't have too much time. So Dhruva Maharaj, I think what I will do, I will skip this story. So just very fast, I will just say, okay. So story of Dhruva Maharaj, this is an example of someone who practiced the Dyana Yoga. And when was this? This was in Satya Yuga, because the Satya Yuga time is the golden age. That's when people used to live for a very long time. They were already, very virtuous and things like that. So what happened is there was this boy called Dhruva, and he is the son of King Uttanapada. King Uttanapada is the son of Manu, one of the sons of Brahma. And he was like Manu is like the king of all mankind. And his son is, one of his sons is Uttanapada. And Uttanapada's son is Dhruva, one of the sons. So this king Uttanapada happened to have two wives. One is called Suniti, and one is called Suruchi. So Queen Suniti is the first wife, and Queen Suruchi is the second wife. Now it so happened that King Uttanapada preferred his second wife more. So the first wife, it was rather neglected. And now this Dhruva Maharaj is the son of the first wife, Suniti. So one day, the king was sitting, and his step-brothers were sitting on the lap of the king. That means the second wife's sons were sitting on the lap of the king, his father. So this Dhruva also saw, and he also wanted to enjoy sitting on the lap of his father. So he climbed on his father, but then the wife was there, the stepmother was there, the second wife, Surichi. So Queen Suruchi, when she saw this, she said, "Hey, Dhruva, you cannot sit here. I am these are my sons, and my sons I'm the favorite wife of the king, and these are my sons. So when they are here, you cannot sit there. You can take your turn later if you want. Or if you really want to sit there, you can, she didn't like Dhruva Maharaj so much, and she didn't like the first wife. She was always jealous of the first wife. So although she became the favorite queen, so she was a bit cruel. So she told the Dhruva, if you want, you can pray to the Supreme Lord Narayana, and you can ask for him his blessing, so that in your next life you can take birth as my son. And then you can sit on your father's lap like this. So very cruel words were thrown to this Dhruva Maharaj. He was a 5-year-old child at that time. And out of extreme, he was a Kshatriya, a prince, a warrior prince. Warrior princes are very passionate. They cannot tolerate insults. They are very determined people. So when she heard this, he went to his mother, Suniti, and asked, "What, can you do anything?" Then the Suniti said, "I'm sorry, I'm out of favor. I can't do anything. So you can only pray. I will only tell you, please go and do some prayers or tapasya. I have heard that if you are really find this very hurtful to you, you can go to the forest and do some dhyana meditation." So Suniti said that. So when he heard that, he took it up. So he was just 5-year-old, but he decided, he was so hurt by this situation, and he was determined to do it, to do this dhyana, and he immediately he left the palace. So when he left, he was on the way to the forest alone, and Narada Muni, one of the wonderful devotees of the Supreme Lord, happened to see Dhruva Maharaj. Then Narada Muni, out of curiosity, asked, "Where are you going?" Then Dhruva Maharaj said the entire story. And then out of compassion, Narada told him, you're just a 5-year-old child. Why don't you go back and enjoy the comforts? But Dhruva was so determined. He was, no, I will do this. And then Narada Muni, out of compassion, and he was amazed at the determination of this boy. So he blessed him. Secretly, he blessed him that you will develop bhakti. But at the same time, he also blessed him with a mantra. He told him to say this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You know, the mantra we said in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, that's the mantra he gave. So then he continued. Dhruva Maharaj went alone. He lived in the forest. You know, he followed the rules according to what Krishna told to Arjuna. He went to a secluded place, to a holy place, and then he lived very simply, eating very little. And in fact, you know, he did very severe meditation, following all the rules and regulations exactly, and putting Vishnu, the Supreme Lord Vishnu, within his concentration. And as he did this, eventually because of usually it takes, in fact, he did this for many, many years. And then finally, Lord Vishnu appeared in front of him. And Lord Vishnu was so pleased, he blessed Dhruva Maharaj. And Dhruva Maharaj, because he was blessed by Dhruva Maharaj immediately realized, oh my God, I did all these prayers, I did all this meditation simply because I wanted to have another kingdom like my father. Because, you know, I was so insulted, I wanted to prove a point, and I was actually wanting to show that I can also have my own kingdom. I can have my own parents who are, you know, the best in the kingdom, like that. So that was what I prayed for. But, you know, after attaining you, he became completely enamored by the Supreme Lord. And then his heart melted. And he said, all these things which I asked for is like broken pieces of glass. Why do I want the broken pieces of glass when I have gotten the Chintamani jewel? The Chintamani jewel is a very special, very, very amazing jewel. So when you are there, when I have gotten you, what use do I have for these kingdoms and all that? But still, because he followed the Dhyana path, Krishna blessed him that you will get what you wanted. You will attain, you will go beyond. Since you wanted this, I will give you a kingdom to rival even the kingdom of Brahma. And then he gave him the blessing of the Dhruva Loka. You know, Dhruva Loka is called the pole star. The pole star is Dhruva Loka, and it's mentioned in the scriptures that it is a very amazing place. And this boy Dhruva, he's given kingship of that place. So this is the chart, the sun's chart. This is the position of it's also called the North Star. The pole star is also called the North Star, Dhruva Loka. And after that, he told that you will come back to me, because by the blessings of Narada, you develop bhakti to me, you will attain me, Krishna said. So that is just to show to us, it's not easy to do this Dyana Yoga. It needs many, many, many years. It needs all these kind of sacrifices. So then when Arjuna heard this explanation from Krishna, he gave this verse. He said this to him. Arjuna uvacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatva stithim stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Now, Arjuna was a very, very powerful warrior. We all heard about we know about his greatness from the Mahabharata. He even defeated the King Indra and his entire devas. He defeated so many powerful personalities. He even challenged, there was once Lord Shiva and him had a fight. Lord Shiva wanted to bless Arjuna. And Arjuna, and then Lord Shiva told him, fight with me. And then Arjuna fought so well that Lord Shiva was astonished, and he blessed him with very special weapons. right? So like that, Arjuna is such a personality, but he is telling that what you are telling me to do now, Arjuna, is extremely difficult, impractical. I don't think I can do it. And Arjuna is saying, I can easily control the wind with my arrows, but I cannot do what you're asking me to do. So difficult. Then Krishna is telling, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamsayam Mahabahu Manodurnigraham Chalam Abhyashena tu Kaunteya Viragyena cha Grihyate. Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti. So he's like, teasing him a bit. Mighty armed son of Kunti, you cannot do this? So it's undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind. Yes. But it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. It can be done. There are people who have done it. Like Hiranyakashipu had done it, Hiranyaksha had done it, Dhruva Maharaj had done it. So like that, people in the previous ages have done it. It's precisely that. It's for the previous ages. Not so much in Kali Yuga. It's not very easy to do this. So Krishna continues, he says, Arjuna says, it's such a difficult path, right? Then Krishna says, it's difficult, yes, but it's possible. Okay. Then he goes on to verse 36 like that. He says it's possible. So then later on, Krishna says, Arjuna is asking, because it's so difficult, because I don't know what to do, right? What happens? I just want to know what happens if someone tries this and then they fail. So therefore this verse, the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. So someone who is a yogi who tried, but then he didn't achieve the perfection, there is no loss, Krishna says, no loss. They simply continue in their next life where they left off. So they are given very wonderful situation. They will take birth in either a very rich family where all facilities are already readily given so that they don't have to work for a living. So therefore, what will they do then? Because they don't have to work for a living, they can renounce and they can practice their Dyana Yoga or continuation of where they left off. So here I'm showing you a picture. This is Mafatlal. He is one of our devotees. He is an extremely rich millionaire in India, Mafatlal Industries. And this is Alfred. This is Alfred Ford. He is the grandson of Henry Ford, and he is also an extremely rich person. But what he did was he gave all his wealth to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, so that we can build our big temple in Sri Mayapur Dham, India. That the temple is he gave about many millions, I think 40 million or something he gave. But most of his, in fact, he gave most of his wealth away. He no longer has even that much, very little. So he's such a personality. So like that, such people take birth in this kind of families so they can continue their spiritual progress. So then they're going to finish soon. Okay. So we have this verse 642. I will just go straight to the translation. Even if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists. So some yogis will also take birth in a family of other yogis, of other transcendentalists or spiritualists. So, sometimes children are born to very elevated families who are very much into spiritual life. So like that, these are souls from such situations. So who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Krishna is telling Arjuna. So now I'm just going to close the summary of this. So Krishna in the end, he says, yes, it's difficult, but it's possible. And don't worry about failure because there is no loss. They simply take birth again and they continue where they left off. All facilities is given to them. And eventually, at last, after so much of difficulties in this Dhyana Yoga path, right, they eventually reach me. Krishna says, he guarantees that happens. So therefore, Krishna is saying, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Why be a yogi, right? because the yogi is better than the tapasvi. Tapasvi means one who is performing austerities. And he is definitely better than the jnani, even greater than the Jnana Yoga, even greater than the karmi, someone who is simply working only. So better to be a yogi, because only by the yogi you can actually break the cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, we can't break the cycle of birth and death. We cannot attain liberation. But when Arjuna heard this, he became a little dejected, because whatever Krishna was telling, it looked very difficult to do. None of us can imagine doing things like what Krishna told us to do. But then Krishna gives a hope. The last verse of this chapter, Krishna drops a point, it's like a ray of light. He gives hope to Arjuna by this verse. He says, the devotee is the greatest yogi. This is the verse. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatinantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha. So this is a very important verse, which we all remember as well, right? And we can also try to memorize this verse. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me. Now, amongst all these yogis, now he's giving the distinction. The yogi who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. Now, what is Krishna describing here? Krishna is describing the bhakta, the devotee, right? He's talking about bhakti. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, yes, I've told you one path, the karma, jnana, ashtanga yoga pathway, right? It's difficult to do, okay, but now I'm telling you, the bhakti yoga I've mentioned before, the bhakti yoga path is easier to do. Now I'm saying, despite it being easier, it is even greater than this jnana pathway. It's easier to do. At the same time, it gives you higher realization. He says here, right? He's the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all the yogis. Krishna is telling. So all advantages are there to the bhakti path rather than the jnana path. So that is the conclusion of this 647 verse, which Krishna will continue talking about from chapter 7 onwards all the way to chapter 12. So he will talk more on the glories of bhakti over the other paths. It's the topmost Raja Yoga. It's the topmost Raja Vidyam, topmost knowledge. Okay, so we are done. So this is a takeaway for today. Also very simple points to remember. The first takeaway is Krishna says to Arjuna, be a yogi, better than being a jnani, better than being a tapashvi, better than being a karmi. Be a yogi, right? So better than being someone who simply follows work or cultivates knowledge or performs austerities. One who works with the right consciousness, following either of these two paths, which I've just given, that person can actually become liberated and achieve higher destinations. And how to do this? Requires practice and detachment, because this is what he answered to Arjuna. It can be done, but you need to practice and it needs detachment. Very important point. Now, Dhyana Yoga, we also understood from this verse, the path that Krishna is describing here is not easy. So Dhyana Yoga is impractical in this age. This is the conclusion. Because in this age, we have no time for anything. Where we have time to do, even when we do meditations, we cannot even focus for a few minutes. We are always being harassed by time. So that's the problem. Unless we can let everything go and then we go to the Himalaya, then also our bodies are not suited. We did not spend our life practicing yoga asanas, how to sit. We sometimes see cockroach also, we get scared. We see snakes, we get scared. If you go to the forest, if you go to the Himalaya, what are we going to do? So and we cannot weather the cold, we cannot weather so many things. A lot of differences are there. So not a common process for the normal people. One or two may be able to do this, but still it's very difficult. And still, what's the point? Krishna is saying the bhakti process is better. So later we will talk more about the differences between again. Okay. And the third one he's saying here is Krishna Bhakta is still the greatest yogi amongst all of them. It is still the easiest yogi path and is the greatest. So this is the takeaway. These are the takeaways for this chapter, chapter 8. Okay, so we are done. There will be quiz after this. So I will post it to you. And just a little bit before we are done, any questions from anyone, please? If you have, you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Let me check the chat. Anything on the chat? Okay, no. Hare Krishna to everyone, to Mr. Ravi. So there are 10 of you. So I think probably due to today being Saturday, not many could probably join us. Okay, so if there are no questions, I wanted to mention that our temple management actually thought that it's because, Saturday, Sundays is not so easy for people to attend. So, and we can see that today. So they have asked that on Sunday, we take a break. Tomorrow we will not have class, and therefore we will continue from Monday onwards so that we can again come back to our regulation. Okay, so I'll put this in the WhatsApp as well, but I just like to let you know. So before we completely end today, right, there's this verse I just want to share with you this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Sanskrit, I will leave it to you, but I'll just go to the translation. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the families of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. So you see, our Hindu Dharma or our Sanatan Dharma, they don't really discriminate against caste. It has nothing to do with that. It's just that, when some people behave in a certain way or they are not used to a certain way, it's like, then certain privileges may not be given to that person simply because they refuse to make the change. But it's nothing to do with birth. So everybody, in fact, Bhagavatam says everyone in this world is born actually a Shudra. We are all born third class because we have lost our great civilization long time ago already. So, in this world, everybody is like that. So there's no such thing as born Brahmana or born person. That's not the real caste system. The actual caste system is one who is behaving according to activity and according to work. So the type of work and the type of nature that the person is having, that indicates the type of whether that person is a qualified Brahmana or a Kshatriya. Some people have a very calm nature. They are doing Brahminical work. They don't earn money. They just take donation and then they are calm and then they do certain. So there are some people like that. So that those are. But it says here, it doesn't matter. Even if some people are not like that, even if born in families of dog eaters, this is considered one of the lowest type of people in the world, right? So even if we are born in such families, or even if we are used to doing such things, right? But if that person is able to chant the holy name of Vishnu or Krishna, he is worshipable. So this is amazing verse, right? This goes to show the power of the holy name. Now, why? Because Krishna does not discriminate against anyone. He gives equal chance, equal opportunity to everyone to attain the spiritual realizations. So persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship are understood as have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices. Because we are asked here, why are such people worshipable? If someone chants the holy name, why are they worshipable? Because it's to be understood that to have the punya to chant the holy name it's like as if that person in his previous lives, he has completed so many austerities, completed so many fire sacrifices, achieved all the good manners of the Aryans, one who knows the truth. Those who chant your holy name are accepted as having bathed at all the holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. Simply because chanting of the holy name is the culmination of spirituality. Because as I mentioned, in Kali Yuga, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasti, Kalau Nasti, Kalau Nasti Eva Gatiranyataha. It is the prescribed process in this age. So everybody can chant. So therefore, I hope we all do also. Before we chant, we can say this mantra, Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So yesterday we chanted 3 times. So was it more than 3? I cannot remember. 10 times I think we chanted. So today we don't have time, unfortunately. I overshot again. Really sorry for that. So can I please request that if you have time today, every day, in fact, whenever we do our prayers, just for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, or even 1 minute, or even 30 seconds, if we can just chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day, if we do this, slowly we can increase the number of rounds that we chant. So slowly we can increase to 1 minute, to 5 minutes, like that. Then we will find that amazing changes in our consciousness, amazing changes in our environment will take place. Okay, we will automatically start learning detachment. We will automatically start learning attachment to Krishna. We will automatically start, we will start having good thoughts, good likings. So this is the amazing power of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Okay, so thank you. With that, I will end. I think I've taken long enough. So just once again, if anyone wants to give a comment or give any feedback or raise a question, you can unmute yourself and speak now. No? Actually, I wanted to get to know all of you also a bit better, but unfortunately, the timing is very, very tight. And I was thinking if it's possible, one of the days I will try to cut the class shorter and we will have a round of introductions just to, get to know each other better. Right now, I can just see all your names. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you for bearing with me. And we hope that you will continue with this. So Hare Krishna, have a good evening and see you all on Monday. Okay?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Welcome.